everyone, it's Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to make our granny flower baby bonnet. Now this pattern has 4 sizes. This one that baby Betsy is wearing is the newborn to 3-month size. You can also adjust the pattern to 6-month, 9 months, and 12 months. And of course, I'll explain that to you as we go along. Now, this is a 6-inch granny square. And if you want to just make the flower granny squares, they'll make a beautiful baby blanket or other things that you want to make with it. And as always, that crochet pattern link is in the notes underneath this video. To make the baby bonnet, you're going to need some medium number 4 weight yarn. I used this Karen Baby Cakes from Yarnspirations. It is a medium number 4 yarn. It's a striping yarn. And the one that I used is called Frosted Pansies. It has lavenders and purple in it, some green and some yellow and some off-white, and I really like it for this project because it adds a little color, but it's a muted color. But you can use any medium number 4 weight yarn that you have. I just really like this because it's a super soft yarn. Now you're going to need about 2 to 3 ounces depending on whether you make the newborn or the 12-month size. We're going to be stitching today with our H hook, which is a 5.0 millimeter crochet hook. You'll need your scissors, and then you'll also need a needle to weave in those ends. We're going to need to make 2 of the granny squares for the bonnet. We're going to begin with a slip knot. We're going to chain 5. We're going to join this chain 5 into a circle, so we'll put the tail of yarn over our hook and pull it through. We'll snug this down and tie that stay knot. All right, put our hook in, pull up a loop, and chain 3. This chain 3 counts as 1 double crochet. And we're going to need to stitch 11 more, so we have 12 double crochets. Yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, and go through the second 2 loops. Now I am stitching over this tail of yarn, and that's so that when I'm finished with my 12 double crochets, in case I have a hole, I can pull that string and gather that closed. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I'm changing to the lavender here with my striping yarn, 11 and 12. Let's make sure I didn't lose count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. We're going to join to that top of that chain 3 with a slip stitch. We join to the top of that chain 3, and I'm just going to put a little chain 1 for now. I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to gently pull on that string, and that's going to close up that hole. And then I can go ahead and take my needle. We'll thread that on there, and we'll just go ahead and weave this in. You can wait till the end if you want to, but I just like to get them done. And it's all done, it's weaved in, don't have to worry about it. All right, so that hole's all closed up on the back. There we go. And now we have 12 double crochets in a circle. For row 2, we're not going to stitch where we usually stitch around the stitches. We're going to be stitching in between each of those double crochets. So we're going to go in between those first 2 double crochets, pull up a loop, and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to stitch a double crochet in that same spot or space between those 2 double crochets. And that's where we're going to place our stitches for row 2. So we'll go between the next 2 and stitch 2 double crochets. Then we'll go between the next 2 double crochets and stitch 2 double crochets. And we'll continue this all the way around, stitching 2 double crochets in between each of those double crochets from row 1. So we'll continue working all the way around, stitching 2 double crochet in between each of those 12 double crochets from row 1. I've stitched 2 double crochets in between each of those double crochets from row 1, and I have 24 double crochets. I'm going to join to the top of that chain 3 that counted as our first double crochet. For row 3, we're going to be stitching in the front loops only, and we're going to be making our flower petals. So we're going to go right in that loop on the front, and just in case you're not sure, if you look on your row, you have 2 sets of loops. You have loops on the back and loops on the front. The loops that are on the front are the loops that are facing you. The loops that are on the back are the ones that are facing away. So we're going to go right in that front loop. That's a slip stitch, and then we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to stitch a double crochet right in that same loop. Now we're going to go to the next stitch and stitch in the front loop and stitch a double crochet. Then we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to slip stitch right in that same loop. That's 1 petal made. We'll go to the next front loop of the next stitch, slip stitch, chain 2, and then 1 double crochet in that same loop. Then we'll go to the next one, front loop, we'll stitch a double crochet, chain 2, then we'll slip stitch in this same loop, and that's our second petal made. And so how we're doing that is we're using 2 loops to make 1 petal. We'll go in the next loop, front loop, stitch a slip stitch and chain 2, then we'll double crochet in that same loop, then we'll go to the next front loop, stitch a double crochet, chain 2, and slip stitch in that same loop. So now I have 3 petals made. Now I do want to take a second and show you the back of our work. If you turn it over, you'll see there's a line right here, and those are the back loops, and we'll be coming back in after we put our petals on and stitch the rest of our square, or I should say the next of this row of square, in those back loops. All right, let's do another petal to make sure you understand. We go in the next front loop and stitch a slip stitch. Then we chain 2 and double crochet in that same front loop. Then we go to the next front loop and stitch a double crochet and chain 2 and slip stitch in that same front loop stitch. So now we have 4 petals made, and we'll continue this around till we get back over here, and you'll have 12 petals when you're finished. I've completed my 12 flower petals. I joined with a slip stitch to that first slip stitch of the first flower petal. Now let's turn it over and let's look at those back loops of that same row, and that's where we're going to be stitching this row. And what I like to do when I have to stitch in the back loops is push those petals forward so I can see those back loops. All right, so we're going to go right in that first back loop with a slip stitch and chain 3. This chain 3 will count as 1 double crochet. We're going to stitch 2 more double crochets in that same back loop. We're going to chain 2, and then we're going to stitch 3 more double crochets in this back loop. And what we're going to be doing on this row is forming the square. So there's my first corner, 3 double crochets because my chain 3 counted as my first, chain 2 and 3 double crochets. I'm going to chain 1, but I'm going to skip 2 back loops and go to this next back loop and just stitch 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3, all in that same back loop. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to skip the next 2 loops and then stitch a corner in this next back loop. And again, our corner is 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. And you'll notice as I'm working, I'm continuing to push those petals forward because, like what almost happened right there, it can get caught in your hook. And it also makes it easier, of course, to see those back loops. All right, chain 1. I'm going to push those petals forward, skip the next 2, and place 3 double crochets in that next back loop. And chain 1. Push the petals forward. We chained 1. I'm going to skip 2 and then place our corner in that next back loop. So 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And chain 1. We'll skip the next 2 and stitch 3 double crochets in the next. 1, 2, and 3. And chain 1. Skip the next 2, and then we'll place our next corner in the next. 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, skip the next 2, and 3 double crochets in the next. 1, 2, and 3. Here's our 3 double crochets. We're going to chain 1. We're going to join to the top of our chain 3, and then we'll slip stitch in those next 2 double crochets, and then slip stitch in the chain 2 space and chain 3. All right, so let's take a look at this. You should have 4 corners now with 3 double crochet, chain 2, and 3 double crochet, and then chain 1, 3 double crochets, chain 1 on each of the sides. I've got my flower sort of pushed up so you can see those corners, but actually it's going to lay like that. All right, now we're going to do just another row of our granny square style. We have our corner here. Our chain 3 counts is our first, so we're going to stitch a double crochet and another double crochet, chain 2, and then 3 double crochets in the corner, and that gets us our corner. Chain 1, we're going to place 3 double crochets in the chain 1 space, 1, 2, and 3, and chain 1. Then we'll go to the next chain 1 space and stitch 3 double crochets, chain 1, and then that brings us to the corner. And of course the corner is 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. And then that brings us to our next side. So chain 1, 3 double crochets in the chain 1 space, chain 1, 3 double crochets in the chain 1 space. And chain 1. And then we will repeat what we did here on these next 2 sides and join back to our chain 3. I've completed row 5, and I have 2 sets of 3 double crochet chain 1 instead of just 1. I'm going to join to my chain 3 and then slip stitch to the corner. 1 slip stitch in those 2 double crochets, and then slip stitch in the corner and chain 1. Let's talk about sizing. Now, if you're making the newborn to 3-month size, you won't make your square any bigger other than we're going to be adding a single crochet edge. If you're making the 6-month size, you're going to need to add another row of what we just did. So you'll repeat 1 more time. If you're making the 9-month size, you'll repeat 2 more times. And if you're making the 12-month size, you'll repeat 3 more times. And each time you repeat, you'll have 1 additional 3 double crochet chain 1 on each of your sides. Your corners will remain the same, but you'll do it exactly the way we did on row 5, only you'll have more sets of your 3 double crochet chain 1. So just to repeat, for 6-month size, repeat 1 more time. For 9-month size, repeat 2 more times. And for 12-month size, repeat 3 more times. Once your square is the size that you need for the size that you're making, we're going to just add a single crochet edge all the way around. We slip stitch to the corner, and so we're going to stitch 2 single crochets, 1, 2. We're going to chain 1 and then stitch 2 more single crochets in that corner. And then we'll stitch a single crochet in the next 3 double crochets. And we'll stitch 1 single crochet in the chain 1 space. 1 single crochet in each of the double crochets. And 1 single crochet in the chain 1 space. 1 single crochet in each of the double crochets, and this is the way it's done no matter how many sets of these 3 single crochets chain 1 that you have on your square. When you reach your next corner, you're going to place 1 single crochet in those 3 single crochets, and then that brings us to the corner, and we'll stitch 2 single crochets, chain 1, and 2 single crochets. And you'll repeat this, what we did here, on these next 3 sides and join back to our first single crochet. And again, this is for all sizes. I have single crocheted all the way around my square. I'm going to join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch. I'm going to slip stitch in that next single crochet and then slip stitch in that chain one space and chain one. Now I'm not going to cut my yarn. You're going to need 2 squares. So here's my first square. This one ended up being just a little bit brighter, which I kind of like. And here's my second square. When you complete your second square, do not cut your yarn. All right? So what we're going to do to assemble our bonnet is we're going to take our bonnet and put it together with the flowers facing out. And we're going to single crochet down here and then down here. And that's why we didn't want to cut our yarn. It would be one more place we'd have to weave in. All right, so we're going to go right in that first stitch on this side and the first stitch on this side and stitch a single crochet, sewing them together. And so we'll single crochet all the way down to this corner, and then we'll move around the corner to this side. We're only going to be single crocheting them together on these 2 sides, leaving the front open. So single crochet from this side and this side, single crocheting them together on these 2 sides. So I stitched the back and top of the bonnet. From here we worked all the way around. And now we're going to cut our yarn and tie that off. All right, now we're going to pull that to the inside, and you can weave that in now if you want to, or you can weave it in later. I'm just going to pull it in so it's out of the way. All right, now this is the top of our bonnet. All right, so we're going to turn our bonnet so that we're working across the bottom of our bonnet. This is the top, this is the bonnet, the bottom of our bonnet. We're going to join our yarn back in here. And we're going to just be stitching along the bottom of our bonnet. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch a single crochet in the next 2 stitches. So 1 and 2. And then we're going to do what's called single crocheting 2 stitches together. So we're going to go in, pull up a loop, then we'll go in the next stitch and pull up a loop, yarn over and go through all 3 of those loops. 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches, and yes, I am stitching over that tail of yarn. Now I can come back in and weave that in later, and then we'll do a single crochet decrease, or stitching 2 single crochets together. And the reason that we're doing this is we want to pull in the bottom of the bonnet so it lays nicely in the back. And so what we're going to do is repeat this all the way around. 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches, and then single crochet 2 together, or single crochet decrease with the next 2. So 1, 2, and then I'll go in this one and this one, and that pulls those together so it fits nicely on the back of the neck. Just to repeat, 1 single crochet in the next 2, and then stitch the next 2 together. And you'll notice that it's going to pull that in just a little bit. So I continued stitching 1 single crochet in the next 2, and then stitch the next 2 single crochets together all the way to this corner. Now we're going to chain 26 chains. I've stitched my 26 chains, and if you want your tie on your bonnet to be longer, because that's what we're making here, you can add more chains if you prefer. I just don't really like them real long because I don't want them to be a strangling hazard. We're going to place a double crochet in the third chain from the hook. So yarn over, 1, 2, 3. We'll stitch a double crochet, and then we'll stitch a slip stitch in the next stitch, and then slip stitch back up to the bonnet. And this will give us a delicate yet sturdy tie. We'll continue to stitch slip stitches till we reach back to the bonnet. I slip stitched across that chain. I'm back to the bonnet. I'm going to place a single crochet in that first stitch, and then I'm going to place a single crochet in the next stitch, and then I'm going to do what's called a picot or pjot, depending on how you pronounce that. So we're going to chain 3, then we're going to slip stitch, and I like to go through both those loops for my picot stitch or picot stitch and stitch a slip stitch. Then we'll go in the next stitch and stitch a single crochet. Then we'll stitch a single crochet in the next stitch. We'll chain 3, and then we'll slip stitch in that single crochet. So single crochet, then single crochet in the next, chain 3, then slip stitch in that single crochet, and like I said, I like to go through both those loops. Some people don't. And then single crochet in the next. And this is the front of our bonnet that we're working on. This is going to be the opening here. And so we'll repeat this all the way around. One single crochet in the next stitch, one single crochet in the next stitch with a picot on top. And I've heard it pronounced picot and picot. Just depends on what part of the world you live in, I believe. It doesn't matter. The stitch is beautiful, and it adds a nice little edge to our bonnet front. One single crochet in the next, one single crochet in the next, and chain 3, slip stitch to the top, or I shouldn't say the top, it's just to the single crochet, going through those 2 loops with the slip stitch and single crochet in the next 2, chain 3, and slip stitch in the single crochet. There we go. And we'll just continue to repeat this, working all the way around the front of our bonnet. I've completed that picot or picot edging all the way around my bonnet. And doesn't that add just a cute little touch? All right, so now we need to add the second tie. Here's where I did my last single crochet, and I am again going to chain 26 chains. Here's my 26 chains. We're going to place that double crochet in the third chain from the hook. And then again, slip stitch back up to our bonnet. Make sure if you made your ties longer on the first tie that you make your second tie the same length so you don't have 2 ties that are uneven. I've completed that second tie, so now I have 2 ties on my bonnet. which brings me back to here. And this is the bottom where we first started and did the 2 double crochets and then the 2 double crochets together. And we're actually going to repeat that again. And that's going to pull the bottom of the bonnet in just a little bit more. So here's my first single crochet. I'll single crochet in the next, and then I'll stitch the next 2 together, which again we call that a single crochet decrease, or stitching 2 single crochets together. So 1 single crochet in the next 2, and then single crochet the next 2 together. And we want to do this because this is going to make the back of the bonnet fit on the baby's head just a little bit better. And remember, you're going to have different stitch counts for different sizes. One single crochet in the next 2, and then single crochet the next 2 together all along the bottom of our bonnet. One, 2, and 2 together. 1, 2, and then those last 2 together. All right, now we're finished. So we can tie off. And I'm going to pull that to the back. My hook through there. There we go. So it looks nice and neat on the front. And so now I have a few ends to weave in, but not very many. And I love the way this yarn works because it is a variegated. But you can also see the bottom here where we brought that in so that it fits snugly on the neck. And it makes it very, very nicely shaped to fit the baby's head. Isn't that just adorable? So here is my baby Betsy wearing the bonnet that I made earlier. And here's the one that we made together. It's a lovely little bonnet. I think it would be perfect to go along with a christening dress, photo prop, or maybe baby's first pictures.